Welcome to another episode of Voices. I'm your host, Keston Jones. Visionaries offering information with clarity, expertise, and substance. We are content experts. Let your voice be heard. Welcome to another episode of Voices. I'm your host, Keston Jones. Again, Voices, visionaries offering information with clarity, expertise, and substance. And today I have another special guest, Miss Daphne McWilliams. How you doing, Daphne? First of all, thank you for agreeing to be on the show. Folks, Daphne and I have known each other for quite some time, and I just thought it'd be a great idea and opportunity to really have her share her extensive work. And usually what I do is I'll read a bio, and your bio is very extensive, but I thought it was best to just reveal who you are for those who may not know you, and we can talk a little bit more about the work that you do. But trust me, folks, you do not want to miss this interview. All right. So Daphne, how you feeling today?
I'm excited to be here.
Oh, yeah. Man, thank you. Really
warm out. It's raining too. I like a warm winter, rainy day.
Absolutely. Especially wintertime, this weather, you kind of can have your jacket off and things like that.
Yeah.
All right. So let's delve right into the interview. You're a person who really embraces culture, being from the West Indies. Tell us about that upbringing, your cultural upbringing, what neighborhood you're from, and how did that influence you as a woman, as a person?
Wow. Well, I'm first generation West Indian American. My parents came from Jamaica and Trinidad. My father's from Trinidad, so as you are.
Shout out to Trinidad now.
Kasi, massive. And we were born and raised on Staten Island. My parents have one of the most romantic love stories ever. Oh. And they were married for 50 plus years. They're both gone. But my parents, I think because of their childhood, family was really important to them.
Okay.
I believe it's also very important in the West Indian culture, but in their case, being raised almost, later in life, I found out either without parents or as a single, raised by a single parent, that they were supposed to meet, and they decided the first day they met that they wanted to get married. They wanted to have a large family, and that was their priority. And we were raised in that atmosphere of two people that loved each other. I mean, we all have our dysfunctions, but it was family first.
Absolutely.
I have 7 brothers and sisters, and for the most part, we're really all very close. And as we've gotten older, we're even closer.
And that's something that I certainly have seen in being around your family at a number of gatherings, and I noticed the closeness of your family. Like, where did that come from?
I think it's because my parents were close. They were friends, and then also they just taught us to be. They didn't even teach us. I think it was by example. My parents are very respectful, especially around us. I don't think I ever saw my parents fight. I found out later that their arguments, they kept their arguments private. I mean, they did disagree on things, but respect was, I think that's what we just witnessed.
Yeah.
And I see it within my family, how respectful we are of just everyone. And we also don't treat people differently. Like, everyone to us is equal. And I was a little angry when I realized how much racism there was in this country, because I was raised in a place where I was thought I could do whatever I want. My parents they just encouraged us to do what we liked, do what we loved, and never made us feel different. And they welcomed everyone into the house. We had strays. I would call my brother's friends. So now when I reflect, and I have a teenager, And I'm like, oh, no wonder why these boys were in our house. Their parents probably kicked them out.
Yeah.
But my mother and father embraced everyone. So that's kind of how I've just walked through the world. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard
And
because my first instinct is to be accepting of everyone. But then it also could be problematic.
yeah.
So it's hard
Yeah.
to find the balance.
I think it's the balance, and I also think that as someone who has seen both sides, West Indian culture as well as American culture, African American cultures, I think that when it comes to communities and families that have that West Indian background, oftentimes we have connection to a lineage, connection to our ancestors in a much more succinct way than maybe in Brooklyn or in other places throughout the United States, because we still have family members that have been on this land or on this property for generations and generations. So the closeness, I think, is still there for many individuals that come from the West Indies, and then you come to the United States and you might have a family member that's in this city and in that city and in that city. Sometimes you lose sight of that, especially if it's a single parent household. Yeah. So you don't have the connection. So I think that's great. But you also mentioned the outside of your family when you went out into the world. You're college educated. What was that process when you ventured from your family and explored education and other pursuits? How did that influence you as well?
Well, my parents, that was also just never really a topic. We just all automatically knew we were going to go to school and go to college.
Mm.
I just followed suit. I enjoyed college. I enjoyed high school. I mean, it was no diversity, but I did feel accepted. But then I guess I was just walking through not feeling different, even though I knew there were differences. College, I had my close friends, and it was an intensive, program that I was in. So I was also concentrating on my work. And I lived on Staten Island, so I had to get used to the commute now, going to school. And, college is a different experience. But again, my parents were supportive. Although I put myself through school, I really didn't lean on them for anything. I did college work study.
What was your major?
I studied fine art.
Okay.
And then I got my bachelor's in restoration of decorative arts and art history.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Filmmaker with an art degree.
Okay. So, speaking of like your upbringing, you were also a child actor.
Yeah.
How was that process? Because you mentioned you're a filmmaker now, so you went from being an actress to behind the scenes. What was that transition like, and do you miss acting?
I don't miss acting because every day I walk down the street, it feels like it's a performance.
Yeah.
I and I started at such a young age, it just felt natural. I just thought everyone was doing it. It wasn't
your credits too, also.
I don't want to date myself here, but I used to do commercials for like Coca-Cola and Burger King. I even did a commercial for what was a fun commercial? They actually were all fun because since there were so many of us, a lot of the times I was working with 2 or 3 of my siblings.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a family effort.
Yeah, yeah. Because what happens is they would cast when they were looking for a little girl, I fit that. And then sometimes they would say, oh, we need a boy of a certain age or another girl or a woman of a certain age. So my family, there's 8 of us. So there was always someone my mother could pull from the herd. And then we did a lot of background work, when I wasn't doing principal work. And that was also fun again, because I was working with my sisters and brothers. But growing up on set was definitely an education for me. I was really interested in sound. That sound department seemed really cool because they were off to the side and I know they could hear everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to hear everything that's going on. I looked into it, but it was not a film. It was dominated by men.
Okay.
Particularly white males. I think they probably were looking at me like, this girl is like, I would hang out with the sound guy and they had Nagras back then. This is just so cool. Plus my father was into sound.
Okay.
He really liked music. He would record sound. He had TAC with reel to reel.
Okay.
He needed to hear impeccable sound, and I grew up that way. Like, sound was the first thing that really mattered to me, then visual. So the transition to working, it was a little different because I my first exposure on set was more in the art department.
Okay.
That was exciting because it was on the film Boomerang. So I took my art degree and I was working in the art department, and I actually got to design a piece for the film. I don't know if it made the final cut, but I was also, because I was in the art world, I knew amazing African American artists, which I wish I had their names. But I took the art director around to Brooklyn and introduced them to artists, and their pieces ended up in the film. Yeah.
So you mentioned Boomerang. You have a number of other credits to your name, working with Spike Lee, uh, Notorious B.I.G., a couple of other artists. Like, what was those? What is that experience like? You know, going from, again, an actor and then the sound, and then actually being a part of cultivating somebody else's vision. Can you walk us into that particular?
Well, when I finished, I did do a film program at NYU, and that introduced me to other filmmakers.
Shout out to NYU.
Shout out to NYU. I started working with other filmmaking students, and then after I worked on Boomerang, I started production managing and helping other people make their films, which led me into the world of music videos. And in the beginning, it was fun. I mean, it was like the Wild Wild West, working almost 20-hour days and shooting in locations where back then permits, we were breaking all the rules. Thank God no one ever died on any of my sets. I actually never got to work with Big.
Okay.
But we were trying to develop a film with him. At the time, I think I was probably producing maybe something for Puffy. I can't remember. I know I did produce a few music videos for him.
Okay.
But unfortunately, he died far too soon. Yeah. But I produced this Notorious B.I.G. memorial type of music video, which was pretty wild. 3-day shoot, maybe longer. Had over $1 million budget, and everybody was in it, from J-Lo to Tracy Morgan opens the clip. I don't know if he goes by Puffy, but he's also very clever and very smart and had a vision. Yeah. And I don't know if you know, there's a filmmaker named Matt X, or Kenneth Matthews.
Yes.
So he's also a very brilliant filmmaker, and also helped to make that music video what it was. So it was great to work on that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what this whole conversation is about, the importance of voices, is important of representation. And you and I first met after you finished the principal wrap up of your film In a Perfect World, where you essentially told the stories of men who were raised by single mothers, and including your own story. Yeah. Can you tell us what led you to want to tell that story, and what went into actually developing that film? Which, by the way, please check it out. It's a wonderful film. I actually show it to my group, and the fathers that I work with, and they all enjoy watching the film as well.
Oh, great. Well, my background helped me probably become a better filmmaker, especially my, experience working with Spike. That was also like going to school. I got to learn a lot about filmmaking, the whole process of filmmaking. Also, there's another professor here, Sam Pollard, who was an editor producer on the first documentary I produced, which was For Little Girls, another documentary people should see.
Absolutely.
But what led me to make In a Perfect World came out of me trying to understand what happens to a man when he's raised by a single parent that happens to be a woman. Prior to that, I was looking at myself as a single mother, but by the time the film was finished, I realized I'm honestly just more of a single parent. Yeah. But that came from just the trials and struggles of raising a boy, and he's African American. I had my fears and my concerns for how do I keep him from not getting caught out there with the wrong crowd or all the elements that are out there, because it's not just police that I have to worry about with my son. I have to worry about so many other people, him interacting with other groups.
Yeah.
But that was a research project that eventually turned into this feature length documentary. And, I'm very proud of the film, and it was a great experience. It definitely helped me become a better parent, but it's a never ending learning lesson. Every day I wake up, I learn something new about myself. And I don't know if I'm really learning anything about my son, but I just learning more about just communication, the importance of communication, the importance of respect, trying to stay respectful, but also creating boundaries, because I definitely don't want to be a friendly parent either.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it by yourself, you end up being bad cop, good cop, which leads to sometimes making decisions out of feeling guilty, at least in my experience. I think every experience is different for each person.
Well, I mean, I've certainly had the chance to meet your son on a number of occasions. Chase is a wonderful young man, and also I've noticed, going back to family and the family connection, that your family, your brothers are also, very much involved. So that's one of the things that families benefit from, having extended families, not necessarily just mother and father, but grandparent, brother, aunts, and cousins. Because we know the old adage, it does take a village to raise children. So now you have your own production company, Seven Child Production.
Yeah.
And you're actually doing a lot of work behind the scenes in terms of, establishing budgets and all these other things. What has that role taught you? Especially, you mentioned, as an African American woman, as someone who is in a business that is primarily ran by Caucasian men. What has that taught you?
I guess I was a little naive in the beginning because of my upbringing. I just never thought about myself being different. It's the other people that make you feel different. And there's probably been obstacles that I just haven't had time to pay attention to.
Mm.
And when I did start paying attention to them, it was later in life. So basically, my motto is I prefer collaboration with people, working in a collaborative group, and also mentoring. I think it's important for each child to have a mentor.
Yeah.
It's great to have a parent, but it's also good to have somebody that you trust, someone that will mentor your children. So this is my opportunity. I'm now mentoring two college students.
Mm.
One completed, she just finished her second short film.
Okay.
And I just finished a fellowship down at Duke University, and I met some terrific young aspiring storytellers, which is very hopeful for our future.
Yes.
And I met this young sophomore. She's out of Baltimore, and now I'm working with her. So that's what all this work is teaching me. I have opportunity to give back.
Yes, yes, definitely, and you have given back tremendously. You've had the opportunity to premiere your film at a number of film festivals throughout the world, not even the country, throughout the world. And shout out to Trinidad. You even prepared in Trinidad. So this is something that I think is important for us to get more familiar with the narrative and using not only just our oral testimony, but visuals and all the other forms, including art, to tell our stories. Because without us telling our original and unfiltered stories, oftentimes people don't hear from them and hear them. So that's why we created Voices, and that's why it was very important for us to get you on here so you can share your story about the wonderful work that you're doing. And please share with our viewers any upcoming projects that you have and anything that you any final messages you want to leave our viewers with.
Am I talking there?
Yeah, yes, please do.
Hi, viewers. I'm developing a few projects, nothing that I share, but it's more historical. And I'm trying to figure out where to look. I'm usually behind the camera. But my message is to the young people out there. You're all storytellers. You're all telling your stories. You're sharing your stories on Instagram and Snapchat. It's great. But for me, I my advice or what I would share with you is, speak to your parents, speak to your extended family, your teachers, get them on camera, ask them 2 or 3 questions, and you have phones, so that works.
Yeah.
And you can start archiving, their stories, and I think it'll be great for you to have that to look back on. I documented a lot, which you see in my film.
Yes, yes.
And it's a treasure to have that footage to look back and add. And I think it's also for my son. Yeah.
So I think it's a treasure to have this episode. It's a treasure to have you here today. And this has been another episode of Voices. What's your thoughts about film and actually being a documentary filmmaker, or even just telling your stories on these various platforms, Instagram, Facebook? We do it all the time. What is your thoughts about that? Is it too much, or do we have to find better ways to tell our stories? Let's hear from you, folks. Again, this has been another episode of Voices. I'm your host, Keston Jones, signing off. Peace.